In the age of brain rot, endless scrolling, and unconscious addiction to consumption, man stands torn between pursuing higher goals or surrendering to the slavery of pleasure and lust. The second option, collapsing into decadences and arrogance, has become the easiest path today. Pleasure is everywhere. With a single click, you can access an infinite sea of content. This unlimited access forms a real obstacle to humanity's evolution from a pleasure driven animal into a creative being. From a psychoanalytic point of view, creativity is what separates human desire from animal desire. Sensuality, or what Freud called the libido, is a life force, purely biological and instinctual, shared by both humans and animals. This instinct obeys the pleasure principle, always seeking satisfaction without regard of reality's limits. This instinctive drive can only be contained by reality, which exists outside the boundaries of the ID and the ego. To understand this better, let's look at Freud's main core ideas. Freud believed the human psyche consists of three interacting parts: the ID, the instinctual biological drive that seeks pleasure and gratification; the superego, the moral conscience shaped by ethics and society; the ego, the conscious self that mediates between desire and reality. Sublimation in Freud's theory. In psychoanalytic theory, Freud introduced the concept of defense mechanisms, the unconscious strategies the ego uses to mediate the conflict between the ID and the superego. Among these, he proposed one of his most profound ideas, sublimation. Freud first observed it while reading about a child who used to torture animals for pleasure. When the boy grew up, he became a successful surgeon. Freud concluded that the same sadistic energy that once caused him to harm animals was later sublimated, transformed into a socially unacceptable and even valuable act, performing a surgery. What is sublimation? The American Psychiatric Association defines sublimation as a defense mechanism where unacceptable sexual or aggressive impulses are unconsciously transformed into socially acceptable actions or creative outlets that indirectly satisfy the original drive. It's an unconscious process that converts an anxiety arising from socially unacceptable desires into more refined, creative, and civilized forms of expression. In Freud's view, sublimation is not the destruction of sexual energy, but its maturation, a creative redirection of repressed libido toward higher aims. Libido energy in early life. The ID, as the primitive part of the psyche, obeys the pleasure principle. It always seeks immediate gratification. Libido in this realm knows no patience. It lives only in the present. This is why individuals dominated by their ID feel anxious or restless when their desires are not satisfied. Libido plays a major role in early childhood. Before the ego develops and before reality is understood, the child experiences the world through immediate gratification. For Freud, this energy must find physical or sexual expression. If it doesn't, it becomes repressed. And what's repressed later returns as a neurotic symptoms: anxiety, obsessive compulsive behavior, or hysteria. However, this raw instinctual energy can be elevated, transformed into something higher. That process is sublimation, the most mature and creative of all defense mechanisms. Freud considered sublimation as a sign of psychological maturity. Art as the pinnacle of sublimation. That's why Freud fascinated by art and artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Fyodor Dostoevsky. He believed that art serves not only as an expression but as a means of transforming sexual and instinctual drives into works that speak to others and enrich civilization. Art plays a central role in the psyche as an ascending mechanism that elevates primitive desires into higher forms of creativity. Through art, The individual channels forbidden or socially unacceptable drives into productive, useful, and meaningful creations that contribute to humanity. For this reason, Freud saw art as the highest form of sublimation, the force that created Da Vinci, Dostoevsky, Picasso, Beethoven, and every artist whose work became immortal. From this view, the artist is no different from anyone else, except that he chooses to express his instinctual energy creatively rather than destructively. The psychoanalysis of creative work. Da Vinci through Freud's eyes. Freud believed an artist's sexual life and creative work are inseparable. He analyzed Leonardo da Vinci's art, arguing that da Vinci's repressed sexuality and longing for maternal attachment, which he lacked as a child, were expressed symbolically in paintings like the Mona Lisa and the Virgin and Child with Saint Anne. Freud interpreted the recurring mother child motif as a regression to early childhood, a fixation and frustration that Da Vinci immortalized in art. Whether Freud's interpretations were accurate or not, he wasn't wrong about one thing: art is a sublimation of humanity's primitive nature. How to seek the sublime. Following Freud's notion of sublimation, investing sexual energy into refined, meaningful pursuits, every person has the capacity to channel their drives into creative and valuable work. What separates a human desire from animal desire is the ability to redirect that energy into art, creation, and higher expression. Today, anyone can satisfy their libido instantly with a phone, a click, a feed full of pleasure. This isn't to demonize pleasure. Sexual satisfaction is a natural physiological need, but there is a difference between a person enslaved by that need, living only to gratify it, and someone who transforms that some energy into art, work, or purpose. So, how can you start seeking the sublime? Sublimation isn't limited to creativity. 1. Social life. The desire to be loved can be redirected into building genuine, healthy relationships and improving communication. Sports. One of the most common forms of sublimation among young men is turning heartbreak into discipline. Even though gym culture is often mocked, but it can actually represent a healthy channeling of emotional frustration into physical mastery. Artistic hobbies, music, writing, painting, sculpting, design are all elevated forms of sublimation that allows us to express repression, fear, and desire creatively. Sublimation isn't just a defense mechanism, it can be a way of life. To express your darkness through creativity is the highest stage of personal maturity. Next time you feel an urge or frustration building inside you, channel it into art, expression, or creation. Don't let it consume you through instant gratification. This was Akram from PsychNotes. Subscribe for more deep readings on psychology and personality insights.